For today's show, I want to talk about 9 steps on how to improve in anything. Now, notice I didn't say to be a world champion or to be great at everything, because some of that is out of your control and some of it is genetics. But I really do think, without a shadow of a doubt, that anybody can improve in anything if they follow at least some of these 9 steps. So let's start with number 1, commitment, and I mean full commitment. Action and also identity. I'll give you an example of that. Let's take a look at the Vikings. They were not farmers, and it's not like they felt bad about that. They knew that. So what they would do is they would build ships and they would go to other areas with their boats and they would land on the shore. And once they did that, they would burn those boats. And there's a reason for that. They did it because then they would have to take full accountability. Because either you go on that foreign land and you win, or you die, because you can't leave at that point. And that was the Viking mentality. And that helped them to win. Now, in my own personal experience, being a bodybuilder, I started trying to build my body when I first started playing football when I was about 8 years old. But I really caught the fitness or bodybuilding bug, if you want to talk that way. I was about 11 years old. And I started doing push-ups and sit-ups, and I had my first barbell set. And I loved it inside. But I didn't want anybody to know. Because back then it would be weird to want to build up your body, and it seemed like a conceited thing to do. And when I was in 7th grade, about 12 years old or so, during homeroom or study hall, I would bring in magazines. And people would look at me weird because the magazines are basically of men who are pretty much naked. Now, I don't have a problem with people who are gay, but back then it was difficult. People would make fun of you if they thought you were. And I didn't even know back then what gay was, but I just knew that it was a little weird to people, and I would get made fun of for looking at magazines with basically naked guys. So I stopped bringing the magazines to school, and I did bodybuilding as a thing for myself. And my father used to get angry at me because I used to wear long sleeve shirts and sweatshirts all the time, and I would hide myself because I didn't want people to know that I cared about bodybuilding and building myself up. I was a little bit embarrassed, even though I loved it. By the time I was 16, my father took me to a bodybuilding contest that I was interested in, but I didn't think I was going to compete in it because, again, I was scared and I was definitely not prepared in any way, shape, or form. But everybody was so nice to me there. The people running the show, the people in the audience, and I guess I was young, so I was kind of like a little mascot. And they convinced me, and I did my first show. I got on stage, and I was absolutely, totally unprepared, and I was terrible. I came in last. And I still didn't think I was a bodybuilder. I was backstage, I remember, and I was trying to pump up by using some of my boxing skills, because I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't consider myself to be a bodybuilder. And it was great. People were cheering for me. They stood up, they clapped, they did all this, and I was very encouraged. The day after was a Sunday morning, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I woke up and I couldn't wait to be a bodybuilder now. I identified as a bodybuilder. I enjoyed it so much, and I couldn't wait to listen to music so I could start developing an actual bodybuilding routine. And from there, you couldn't stop me. Now, when I was 17, I ended up going back to the same show, and I won the Teenage Long Island. And Steve Mahalik, who I'll tell you about him later, he wanted me to go into the men's group. 19 would be 20 and over. And I went into that contest, and somehow, some way, I won that also. So I won the Teenage Mr. Long Island and the Mr. Long Island at 17 years old. I don't know if that's ever been duplicated or not, but I don't care. I love bodybuilding, and it wouldn't matter either way. So that's how I got my start. So again, full commitment and identify as what you want to be. Number 2, do not reinvent the wheel. Listen to your teacher, learn the basics. Be an empty vessel. Bruce Lee talked about this a lot, that if you have a teacup and you want to taste somebody's tea, you have to have an empty teacup. You don't want them mingling, so it would ruin the taste. And so in order to be an empty vessel, you have to allow the information to come in. Now, I've been a trainer for about 35 years, and I can tell you the best students, for the most part, have been women. And the reason for this is because most of the time when they come into the gym, they really want to know the information and they want to listen. And they come there, they pay you for your information. Whereas a lot of men come in with these preconceived thoughts, and they come in there with their ego first. And there's a lot of challenging going on, and there's a lot of mistakes that they had made in the past, and they're still challenging you, and they're not an empty vessel. So it creates a difficult situation when you're trying to teach them something new, because you have to make them unlearn all of the things that had happened previously, and then you have to start teaching. So this becomes difficult. So again, Bruce Lee would say, be an empty vessel for the information and do the basics. Now in music, if I think about basics, one band that keeps coming to mind is AC/DC. Now, I remember reading an article in Rolling Stone magazine, and the writer was talking to Angus Young, who is the principal writer, and he's the lead guitar player of AC/DC. And he said, listen, I listened to your last album, and what I'm hearing here is the 12th album in a row where you sound exactly the same basic chords, same drum beats, same style. He goes, and that would be my assessment of your new record. And Angus Young said, well, I'm very offended and angry by your comment. And the writer said, well, why would that be? And Angus Young said, because it's not 12 albums that we have that are exactly the same. He said it's 14 albums that are exactly the same. And he goes, and you should know your material before you start writing stories. So the point is that Angus Young was doing basics for a long time. When you listen to AC/DC, you're going to expect a certain sound. They play the same basic beat over 3 or 4 chords. That's what they do. They have the basics, and they've been around for about 40 years now, and they're one of the most successful bands in the world. If you listen to AC/DC, don't expect to hear improvisational jazz. It's not going to happen. They play the basics, and they do it well, and you can do it too. Every skill has the basics, and if you just look at the basics, you can improve. Number 3, focused practice. Always be present, be repetitive, and don't practice until you get it right. Keep practicing until it's almost impossible for you to get it wrong. Now think about this. Let's take something very simple and small, like breathing. We've been breathing since the day we were born. You think you're good at it? Maybe not, because as a therapist, I have to teach breathing techniques all the time, or we teach meditation. And most people have a really hard time inhaling and exhaling deeply over a 3-second period. And it's a very difficult process for them to do. And so we could take the smallest of small things like breathing and be present with it and be repetitive and do it correctly. Let's think about sex. There's people that have sex hundreds of times, thousands of times, over many years. How many people out there consider themselves honestly to be sex gods? Very few. Why is that? You're consistently doing the same thing for 30 years, 40 years, and you're still not good at it? Why would that be? It's because it's no focused practice. That's why. You're not present when you're doing it. You just do. So if you do it with the thought of improving every time, or being better, or being conscious of what you're doing, you can't help but improve. Number 4, very important to me. Find a mentor. 2 very important things about finding a mentor. Let's go over the first one. You want someone who has wisdom. Now, there's a difference. There are some mentors that have knowledge, and that's very good, but wisdom is better. The difference being, for example, let's take self-defense. A person who's good at self-defense, who has a lot of knowledge, knows a lot of chokeholds, they know what to do, they know how to fight. They have the basics and more. But a person with wisdom would know when to use the right techniques and when not to use any technique at all. Sometimes it's better to walk away, because a lot of times it's better not to fight at all, and that's the person who has wisdom. To use another example, A person with knowledge can build an atomic bomb, but a person with wisdom would know if they should even use it in the first place. Very important. Now, the second part of a mentor is find somebody who cares. It's very important that you find someone who cares about you, that can guide you through the process. And in my life, it was somebody named Steve Mahalik. Steve had a lot of clients, but for some reason in one of my first shows, he came to me when I was very, very young, and he said, if you can find your way to my gym, you have a free membership for life. And I took 2 buses to get to his place and 2 buses back home, and that was about 45 minutes each way, but I did it. And when I showed up at his door, he accepted me, and he fully came through with his promise. And he became my friend, and he treated me different than everybody else. Not because I was special, but because he cared about me over time and treated me different because we're all different. So what happened was, and I think part of it was because I came from a background where I didn't have a lot of money, and I was young, and then I started going to college. And he knew that eventually down the road it would be more important that I got a degree and I made money, more so than working out in bodybuilding. Because in bodybuilding, sometimes it will cost a lot of money through, let's say for our show today, let's say that there's certain supplementation that may or may not be involved in bodybuilding contests. And he wanted to steer me away from that and to spend more time in school, because he knew that at some point that I probably could be convinced to go and buy supplements at the expense of my schooling. And he never wanted me to do that. So he would go to the shows with me, and he was my friend, and he cared about me. He treated me different than a lot of his, say, 25, 30, 40-year-old clients that already had careers in other things. So he treated me special, let's say. And I have a picture here that's very important to me. It's up on my wall. Well, it's not now. I took it off so I can show it to you. And I think it was about 19 years old in this picture. And you see me, but really there's a whole family behind me that you don't see. And there was Steve, who helped me a lot and was a mentor to me, and I can never thank him enough. There's me before my hair was gray. That was a long time ago. Let me tell you a little bit more about Steve. Steve was Mr. USA, Mr. America, Mr. Universe. And here's a book. That's what Steve used to look like right there. And as a mentor, obviously, I believe he was one of the smartest people I've ever met. He was a father figure to me. So I'm going to read you a little bit here from Steve. It's from page 47 of his book. It says, if you absorb nothing else from this book, know this with certainty, that all of your success starts and ends with you, and that you will become what you believe. Ask yourself these questions. Who is most important to you? Who do you blame for your failures? Who is responsible for your successes? Who doesn't live up to their agreements? Who is responsible for putting negative viewpoints in your head? If you search hard enough and look honestly, you will find that the answer to each question is you. If you learn nothing else in this universe, understand this and teach it to your children. The most important lessons I learned about becoming a champion involved how I felt about me. Nothing you encounter in life means more than how you feel about yourself. Consciously or unconsciously, you are the most critical of yourself. Self-criticism is the basis for failure, the lack of positive viewpoints, and uncompleted projects. I can go on. So again, Steve was my mentor, and I would suggest you get one who has wisdom like that and also cares about you. Number 5, enjoy the process. There is no end game. There is no point at which you say, good, I'm fine, I'm good enough, it all ends here. That's not the way it is. The end game is actually lifelong learning, it's lifelong experiences, and lifelong relationships. I've been watching this show with my girlfriend lately on Netflix, and it's called We Are the Champions. I suggest you watch it. It's great, even though you wouldn't think it would be. But there's people on there that compete in yo-yo championships, hot chili eating contests, and they've got this one where these groups of people run down this 45-degree hill, and it's so steep you can't run down it. You end up killing yourself because you're breaking bones, you're falling down the thing. And it sounds like the dumbest thing ever. But the fact of the matter is that there is a skill level here, but it's not just that. It's the community that they're in and the experiences that they have that makes it all worthwhile. Just going with my bodybuilding career, I've talked to some amazing people in the world. I've had amazing relationships with people. I've been to places that I never would have otherwise. It's just so great, I can't even say. I wouldn't even know where my life would be without it. And I don't have to be the best in the world. You know, it's been so important to me. So again, enjoy the process. Losing sometimes or not being the best sometimes is also a part of it. And that helps you to be a better person in other areas of your life. So it's really always a win-win. So again, enjoy the process. Number 6, one of my favorites, Moneyball mentality. I have this based off of a movie that I saw that I really liked, and I don't want to explain it all because that kind of goes off the ranch here, you know, from this show. But the point of it is that the person in this movie was doing something different that most scouts were not in terms of baseball. Instead of looking for the flashy statistics like home runs, he was choosing things like on-base percentage. And some of these things are overlooked in baseball. Like if you walk to first base and you can steal second, you're in scoring position already. Probably much better off than a guy who hits a home run once every 3 or 4 games and never gets on base. So I have this broken down and my clients know this, especially my training clients that I've put in a lot of bodybuilding shows over the years. I have skills broken down into 2 categories. Number 1, the ego and the flashiness categories, and where people do the ooh-ah, right? They think these skills are amazing and great. Okay, that's one side, but I don't think that that's important. Number 2, the other ones. There are other skills that make you more reliable for achieving success over a period of time. And those are the ones you want to pay attention to, even though that they're not maybe the most flashy. And I'll give you an example of this. You know, especially when I was younger, when I was very, very small, I loved to compete in bodybuilding shows because at that time I would win a lot or do very well, and yet in normal clothes I wouldn't look like a bodybuilder. And there's a reason for that. Because in amateur hour, so to speak, when people think of bodybuilders, they think of huge arms, maybe a puffy chest, and a lot of size. But everybody has that in bodybuilding shows, or even if they did, it doesn't really matter. That's not what wins shows. So if you want to moneyball it, look for the things that actually reliably make you win, which should be have a developed lower body. That separates you. And be as lean as possible. And something else, add a nice V shape. Now, if you're in a bodybuilding contest or a physique show and you're the leanest one there, it's virtually impossible not to place in a show like that. Because if it's a muscle contest and you're the most muscular, how do you lose? So you might lose because the judges have different opinions, but you'll always place. So that's what I call about moneyballing. Now, at the very, very top, the 0.00% of people, they have it all. All right, they're going to be huge and they're going to be lean. We can't worry about that. But most of the time, you will be amazingly successful if you just moneyball it the way I'm telling you to. You want a moneyball being a therapist? I can tell you how to do it, because you don't have to spend $100,000 in 10 years to be a therapist. You can be a better mother, you could be a better father, you could be a better spouse by learning some basic things. And here it is. A lot of therapists think it's all about techniques, what they know. being an expert in psychoanalytic theory, being able to show how intelligent they are to other people, using really big words, making people confused, talking about the Cartman triangle and all these weird things that people could care less about. Nobody cares about that. People want to be in less pain. 85% of success in therapy is what's called a therapeutic alliance. It's creating a healthy attachment to another human being. That's it. So how do you do that? You give people a very open, safe, non-judgmental space to express their emotions and feelings. And ask them appropriate questions so they can figure out their life for themselves and they can develop self-awareness. They don't want to be lectured. They don't want to be judged. They don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to be told that they're bad people or they're wrong. They wouldn't be there if they thought that everything was perfect and going right. The idea is to meet them where they are and to join with them and walk with them and not act like you're in some ivory tower that's better than them. So again, if you want to moneyball this, you don't have to know about Carl Rogers and Carl Jung and whoever you like, Freud. You don't have to know any of that. Just be a good person with empathy and compassion. You have 2 ears? Perfect. Double the amount of listening time you do. You have 1 mouth? Good. Half the time, speak. But when you speak, seek to understand the other person. Don't tell them what to do. You're not better than them. You're just another human being just like them. And that's really it. I just saved you $100,000 on a free YouTube show. How's that? I can tell you how to moneyball sex too. For men, a lot of guys out there, well, I'm not that good because I'm not big enough. No. You're taking the easy way out. You're not good at sex because you don't spend time doing the important things, right? How about being receptive to your partner? And if you want to measure how long something is, why don't you measure how long you take having sex? That might be more important, right? How about take your time and not try to act like you're running towards a finish line? That makes no sense, does it? And if you want something to be more reliable, pay more attention to your oral sex skills. That'll get you much further. Why don't people care about these things as much? Because they're not flashy and ego-driven, that's why. People go, oh, size matters. Well, right, because it doesn't sound fun in a movie to say, caring matters. Caring what your partner thinks matters. Like, that sounds, it sounds just too nice. People don't care about that. And women too, you're not off the hook. Listen, getting implants for breasts, or I live in Las Vegas, I've seen more butt implants now than, it's just crazy. That has nothing to do with your sexual skills. As a matter of fact, it probably takes away from it if you think that you're somehow some sexual dynamo because you got things that are bigger. Who cares? There's nothing that works there in terms of skill level because you put in a piece of plastic or silicone or whatever it is. Again, same thing. Be more receptive to your partner. Be a little more caring to your partner. And let's not forget the emotional part. Be a little more emotionally connected to your partner. All these things go a lot further than, pumping up your boobs a little bit more, right? So moneyball sex too. Do the things that work reliably. Number 7, accept negative feedback as easily as positive feedback. Anybody can accept positive feedback. That's easy. We all love compliments. But if you want to get better in life, you're going to have to be able to accept the negativity. Or, I don't think it's negative when people say something where you can improve. I actually think that's positive. All my clients know this, whether I'm doing therapy or whether I'm doing training or whether I'm doing these YouTube shows. I'll ask them, is it good for you? Is it working for you? Is there something there you thought could have been done better? What would you have liked to have seen? How can I improve? And what I'm asking for there is an honest evaluation, not Joe, you're amazing, you're the best. If you want to put that in there, that's fine, but I'm not perfect at everything, so I want to hear the negative. Why? Because the show is about how to improve. And you can't improve if you're not willing to look at the parts where you're not as good. And if you want to know where you're not as good, because maybe you're blind to yourself, ask other people. It's easy. We want equanimity here. Whether you hear something positive about you or something that's a little difficult for you to hear, you need to be able to balance it just the same. As a matter of fact, I put more weight on when people have constructive criticism of me than I do when they just pat me on the back and tell me how great I am. You know, I don't always need that. I need honest opinions on how to get better. If you want to be defensive, you can do that, but that leads to lifelong mediocrity. And again, that has nothing to do with improving, so that's not going to go well. Number 8, always choose activity over passivity. Or you could say more testing and less studying. Now this happens a lot. I can tell you, when I was trying to get licensed as a marriage and family therapist, when I was an intern, I would talk to a lot of other therapists and other interns, and it would come up about taking the test for licensure. And it was amazing to me how so many of them did not want to study that much because they thought that that would get in the way of them doing well somehow. You know, they just wanted to do their regular studying a little bit and not worry about taking tests on a regular basis to perform well at this final test. So I spent some money, and what I did was I took this course. And of course, there's obviously studying. But on the last 30 days, I took 30 tests in a row. And this is where the real training is. So I took the 30 tests in a row. Now keep in mind that the tests are 4 hours long. And after doing this time after time, and to be honest, sometimes I took more than one test in a day. Now, I ended up being that within a week, I was able to average about an hour and 3 minutes to about an hour and 7 minutes for each test, meaning that I shaved about 75% off of the time. So it was like I was in and out. These tests became easy. And you were thinking, well, what's my retention? What are my grades? Well, again, my grades were anywhere between like a 93 all the way up to a 98 as an average. So when I took the test, it was so easy for me that I could have fallen asleep during it because I'm used to taking a test every day. It wasn't really challenging me at all. And yet, like, I'm shaking my head no here. I can't believe that even therapists have this thought that they can not study or study a little bit and not keep working on the actual test. You know, I see this a lot in sports, right? When I was doing boxing, you can hit a speed bag, you can hit a heavy bag all you want. But how do you know that you can block or duck punches from another human being unless they're being thrown at you? How do you know you can handle getting hit in the face a couple of times too? So you can't tell me you're a fighter unless you've been fighting. You know, it's just simple. So again, get active, not passive. Take the test. Get out there and do it. That's the bottom line on that. Number 9. Well, let me just go back a little bit because I think this is important. Because I just remembered I had this conversation this morning with somebody. Listen, your life is not in a book. Your life is not on a YouTube channel. I talked to a guy today, he was like 30 years old, and everything, he was actually a really intelligent guy because he watches YouTube videos all the time. But in terms of applying it in his life, he needs help, to be honest. But he has a lot of knowledge, but he doesn't know how to apply any of it. That's because he listens to other people talk all the time, but he doesn't really know what he's hearing because he has no experience. So again, books are fine, YouTube videos are fine, obviously, but you need to get out there and get in the field and do some playing. Bottom line, experience, very important. Number 9, let other people shine. And what do I mean by that? It means that you can't be good at everything, right? Some people are going to be really good at things and you are going to have to acquiesce or pay them for their experience and for their knowledge in a lot of areas. I'll give you an example. About 10 years ago, I had to take my dog, and she was very sick. I took her to the vet about 2 o'clock in the morning, an emergency vet. She does some tests on her, she comes back, and she says to me, well, you have options. You could do option A, B, C, D. She ran down the list. And I said, with respect, this is what I'm going to say. I appreciate your knowledge and your wisdom and all the years that you went to school. And because of that, I don't want to make any decisions here. You're a professional at your job, and I'm a professional at my job. My job is to make the money that I need to make to be able to pay you to do the best job you can. I don't want to make a life or death situation on my dog. I don't know what to do. I'm not a veterinarian. So she said to me that there were a lot of people that would not do certain procedures based on money. And so that's why she was giving me these options. So I said to her, if this were your dog and money was no option, how would you act at that point? That's what I want you to do. And if this is a situation where, my dog could not have been saved and she was going to be in pain and it wasn't going to work, then we need to have that discussion. But if it's something that could be fixed, use every available option, number one, and every part of your knowledge and wisdom to fix the situation. And I promise that I will use my knowledge and wisdom at my chosen profession to pay you to do that. And that's what I did. And I continue to do that, no matter what. Even if it's someone who is a landscaper. Now, I'm not a hairdresser, but my girlfriend is, so I don't really know what I'm talking about here, but let me throw this out there. I think everybody wants a haircut that they want. They're entitled to get that. But if you go to a hairdresser and you start telling the hairdresser how to cut hair, how they should do the color, or that you used to know somebody in 3rd grade who did it like this, and you start questioning their skill level to a professional, I think that's going to break what we call before the therapeutic alliance or that healthy attachment. And I'm not saying it could, but it might cause a little rift in that relationship there, and you might not get the best haircut that you want because you're not putting full confidence in the person you're dealing with. And so I choose to do this all the time. If I can't give my full confidence to somebody to do their job, then I have the wrong person, then I'll get somebody else. But it's not a good thing to do to try to harm somebody or try to act like what they're doing is not up to par. Let the professionals do what they need to do. So I call this, again, let other people shine. So again, the show for today is how to improve in anything. Let me go over the 9 steps real quick. Number 1, a commitment, meaning full action, and identify as what you want to be. You want to be a bodybuilder? Be proud. Say you're a bodybuilder. Number 2, do not reinvent the wheel. Number 3, focused practice. I'll give you an example on this real quick as it's in my mind. Something like push-ups or sit-ups, very easy thing to do. If you have a trainer and they tell you how to do something and you are still not being able to do correct form after like 6 months, have some dignity, have some respect for your trainer and for yourself. It means you're not paying attention. You're not being present. You're not trying to be repetitive. You're not trying to do the right thing. You're not focusing. So again, have some dignity. Do the right thing. Focused practice. Number 4, find a mentor. Again, somebody with wisdom and preferably somebody who cares about you. Number 5, enjoy the process. Number 6, Moneyball mentality. Number 7, accept negative feedback as easily as you can accept positive feedback. Number 8, always choose activity over passivity. And number 9, have the courage to let others shine. I'm Joe Peroni. This has been the Rise Above Project. Hopefully this has been valuable to you. And hopefully you can subscribe or send it to some other people and convince them to subscribe. I can use a few more people. Thank you very much. I will talk to you next time. Thank you.